VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. Rebirth with Musica Intima. Hosted by Amy Amantea, with special guests Deanna Gestrin, Jacob Gramit, and Lucy Smith.
Welcome to this VocalEye Almost Live event. My name is Amy Amantea, my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Associate Director here at VocalEye. I am your host for these Almost Live events, and I am a proud member of this blind community. You all are so lovely and have enriched my life in so many ways, and I just can't thank you enough for, being here every Wednesday, but just for also being my friend. I love being in this space with you all. I love the time I get to share with you outside of this space, especially for those of you who are close, but the phone calls and the emails that I share with you all who are not living here in Vancouver. I treasure all of those moments. Shout out to Tony. Thanks, Tony, for sending me some information on the Knights of Columbus today. I really appreciate that. And a big thank you to folks who have supported VocalEye since we've pivoted to this online platform, and since before then, but this is a very special place where we have begun to share arts and all things arts in this online space. And so we really value what you all bring to this space. We value the testimonials that you share with us, the donations and the financial contributions that you've made. So a big thank you to all of you all for making those offers to us. And if you happen to be joining us on our YouTube channel, you can support VocalEye by signing up for our newsletters, by visiting our website and seeing all the various things that we do, and of course by hitting like and subscribe and supporting us in that way as well. So we hope that you do those things as well. VocalEye is broadcasting to you all this evening from the traditional and unceded or stolen territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. It was just this past Friday that I was watching my local news and I learned something that I was unaware of that happens in Vancouver, which is the Vancouver Indigenous Fashion Week. I had no idea that this existed, and I thought, I bet you that other people don't know. So this runs from November the 20th to 26th, so there are still a couple of days for folks to be able to learn about this, to check out events. So if you would like to do that, you can do that. And it happens at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre here in Vancouver. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Fashion Week, the Indigenous Fashion Week here in Vancouver, and what I've learned so far. So I've taken most of this information from their website, but I want to share this with you all. So their mission is to highlight how fashion can build connections with Indigenous values, wisdom, and history, becoming a powerful tool for the cultivation of strength and resilience in Indigenous communities, as well as a vehicle for understanding and reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. They are committed to facilitating reconciliation through collaboration and dialogue about fashion, identity, story, art, and representation. The fashion is wearable culture, and it showcases the designers of more than 30 plus accomplished artists. So there's lots of designs that are part of the Fashion Week itself. Now, the main events will showcase Indigenous fashion. It showcases art and drumming and dance, singing, and more throughout these 4 themed nights that happen throughout the festival. They feature captivating fashion shows, vibrant pop-up shops, cultural showcases, interactive art installations, and empowering educational workshops. This immersive experience will celebrate the rich diversity of Indigenous creativity and fostering and deepening the appreciation of Indigenous art forms and cultural traditions. So I wanted to bring attention to one of the pieces they were talking about on the news. Obviously, this was on Friday, so a few days ago now, but they were talking about one of the events that they held, which really felt very impactful for me to learn about, and it was the Red Dress event. And one of the designers was talking about this event and showing 2 pieces of 2 red dresses that she had designed particularly for this event. And this is how they talk about this event. So in quotes, they say, join us, dress in red to remember and celebrate our resilience and strength. We come together wearing red in honor of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and LGBTQ members of our communities. As we remember our murdered and missing family and community members, we honor their beauty and strength and celebrate our collective resilience. And so people were invited to come to this event and wear red. And that really struck a chord with me. If you are somebody who is not able to attend some of these events that are coming up in person, there are still some events left. I encourage you to go to the website. We're going to circulate a link in our follow-up email because there's a marketplace as part of this. And so you can purchase some wearable art and some other art things. So I just want to share with you a couple of things that I've purchased as holiday gift giving things. So two things that I think that you all can check out that you might be interested in. So an artist, Allison Sage, they're known for hand-poured coconut soy candles that support wellness, gathering, and joy. And this particular artist group, they give back to their community. Many of the artists in this space do. They give back to their community by mentoring, by donating products, by donating funds to various community collectives, right? So things like the Downtown Eastside's Women's Project, to Indian Residential School Survivors Society. So they're really giving back to folks in Indigenous communities and other Indigenous artists as well. So check out Alice and Sage. And then the other one is Copper Canoe Woman, who is an artist, and she creates coastal inspired artisanal crafted jewelry. And y'all know, as I'm the blind beater, I love my artisanal crafted jewelry. So I bought a couple pairs of they're like half moon earrings, and they're in like a vibrant blue colored kind of a see-through acrylic kind of look to them. They're about 2 inches, and they are to acknowledge and symbolize the balance between the energy of the moon and the sun. And so I've bought a couple of these special pairs of earrings to give as gifts for some holiday friends. So I'm supporting Indigenous artists, and I encourage you all to think about that as your holiday gift giving opportunities. So that'll be a link in our follow-up email, so stay tuned for that as well. A big welcome to you all on this Wednesday, November the 22nd, 2023. And tonight we're proud to offer you our Almost Live event number 136. That number gets bigger and bigger every week, as of course counting does go up. And tonight we're proud to offer you Rebirth with Musica Intima in our space this evening. So we've got some special guests. So I want to invite Deanna in our space. We've got Jake in our space, and we've got Lucy in our space. And these folks will be introducing themselves. But Deanna is, you'll know Deanna's name. She's our artist in residence, but Deanna's also been here as our intern from Adler University way back when. And Jake and Lucy are joining. So like, Deanna, welcome, because originally I think this was maybe your brainchild to bring to the VocalEye platform. How would you like to start this conversation? What is your involvement in musica intima?
I sing with musica intima.
Of course you do.
Jacob and Lucy invited me to join them last year. So I was working with VocalEye and also involved with rehearsing and performing with musica intima, and enjoyed it so much in the May 30th anniversary performance that I have stayed on. And we are currently rehearsing for a show this weekend. We have other shows coming up in December. So it's been a wonderful journey to be with musica intima.
You're rehearsing for a show this weekend and you're here tonight? I mean, bless, but you're here tonight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would love for Jacob and Lucy to just introduce yourself to our community.
Hi.
Hello. My name's Lucy.
I'm Jacob. We are the we're also married, and we talk over each other all the time, so that's going to be a special
so you're sharing a square.
Yeah. We are co-managers of musica intima. So technically, I do some of the more artistic management. Lucy does some of the more general management field, but we both overlap. And I've been with the group for about 10 years on and off. Lucy's been with us.
Well, about 10 years as well.
Yeah.
We just missed each other when we first started singing with the group. Yeah, we met again in 2014, singing with musica intima at Christmas, and the rest is history. So we love being able to sing with the group and have our voices be one of the 12 equal voices in the room. And we also love our job facilitating the running of the ensemble. So I like to say that I do all the things Jake doesn't want to do in the office. But it's good because those things actually give me dopamine. So, because they're check them off the list. Yeah,
Nice.
we're really super happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us in the space. Is there maybe a little background on
Yeah.
music that we can share?
I was thinking the same thing, Amy.
Yeah.
I'd love to tell you a little bit about Musica Intima. I was in high school when Musica Intima was developed. It was developed and founded in 1992, and is one of 2 professional vocal ensembles in Vancouver. So there are 12 singers, as Lucy mentioned. And I was in high school and remember hearing about this ensemble and kind of, as I grew in music, was always aware of what Musica Intima was doing. So it's really exciting on a personal level to be in the ensemble at this point. Musica Intima has won 2 Western Canadian Music Awards and has had 3 Juno Award nominations. And I mean, Jacob and Lucy can tell you more about some of the accomplishments over the years, but we're going to present a special program that is the 30th anniversary concert. And I think before we get into any of that, is there anything else you want to share about Musica Intima and the successes that we've had over these last years that you've been in the ensemble?
Yeah, well, I would say that we clearly need to update our bio on the website because we now have won 3 Western Canadian Music Awards, and there's another Juno nomination for the most recent album, Nagamo, which was our project with Cree composer Andrew Balfour, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. The one thing I would highlight is that we are fully collaborative as much as possible. So all 12 singers in the room have equal voice. We all try to share part of ourselves in the music that we share with the rest of the world. And so it's a very personal experience to sing with the group, and I think it's a very personal experience to hear the group as well.
Yeah, it was really cool. It started out as 8 friends who were, I think, singing in different choirs in town, and they just really wanted to explore what co-leadership and co-directorship could mean. And I believe that the very first meeting they had was around a coffee table with a bottle of wine, singing some Spanish early music, starting out totally amateur, just, friends loving to get together and sing. And yeah, 30 years later, we're fully professional.
And still here.
Yeah. Jake and I became the co-managers. Well, we started our journey with that about 5 years ago. And yeah, it's continuing to be a really great journey of learning, and it's great.
This may sound like a silly question, so you'll have to pardon my naivete. What is the difference between a professional choir and any other choir? Because Deanna, you said it's one of 2 professional choirs, and I'm just wondering what the distinction is between those. It may seem obvious to some, but for me, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about the membership of the group and what they call themselves as full-time musicians or not, I think. So a lot of choirs get together that are people who have jobs as postal carriers or teachers or whatever. And then they meet once a week in the evening to put together some stuff. And it's equally beautiful and wonderful. But most of the people in Intima and the other choir, the Vancouver Chamber Choir that Deanna mentioned, was they are choosing to be singers as their full-time vocation. And of course, there are exceptions. And Deanna is one of the people who wears about 8 billion hats in their career. But most of us are focusing on music as our primary career in some way.
Yeah. You use the term full-time, which is pretty funny. But I guess you mean just like piecemealing together different gigs. And I know at times people have sung in both Vancouver Chamber Choir and Musica Intima as a way to sort of make ends meet. We have voice teachers, arts administrators, all sorts of people, different backgrounds, which lends itself to like how cool it is in the room, having everyone's experiences coming in.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's really interesting talking about co-leadership. That's a unique model. Typically, a choir would have a conductor who is sort of making decisions and facilitating and leading the music the direction of the music and also the live music. And in this ensemble, we are looking to each other and everybody's different experiences, musical experiences and otherwise, to inform the direction of the music.
I love that. That kind of makes a lot of sense to me. Again, in my naivete, my naive experience of music and being in choirs and those kinds of things. But if you have folks that are, you know, trained musicians and this is their career path, then you have folks in the room that have some level of understanding of how this works, and so can, you know, the co-leadership thing, the collaborative co-leadership thing makes sense. Whereas maybe in a community choir, so if I was to join a choir and I don't know the difference between an alto and a soprano, like I can't make any kind of decisions that make any, you know what I mean? Like how would I be able to make any kind of real decision-making stuff that makes sense to how a choir would function? But if you've got musicians and full-time career musicians, then they all bring a musical lens into the space that makes that collaboration work, perhaps.
Well, yeah, and we actually love coming to amateur choirs or kids choirs who aren't used to working in this model, and just showing like, you too, like everyone's so scared. We're all so scared at first, right? Like, oh, we have to lead this, we have to make these decisions. But some of the most magical moments of intima have been when you get to that point in a workshop where everyone's singing together and watching each other, and yeah, it's really, really special, and I think anyone can enjoy that.
Well, and I think everyone has a perspective to share on the music making, whether you have a degree in music or you're in your second rehearsal with a choir that you just joined. I think we all bring ourselves. Singing is such a personal thing. It's your body, right? And so I think it's really, we encourage any group we work with, any person we work with, that they do have something important to say in the room.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for that. Again, it's just not my experience of being in these spaces. So I love that you all feel like you are leading this sort of precedence in this space, right? And telling other folks that it's okay to follow this model. Don't be afraid. There's a lot of beauty here, you know.
And we all mess up.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make a mistake, do it loud and proud.
Yeah. Love this. Is there some kind of theme to musica intima that you would, or not a theme, or are there certain things that you gravitate towards in terms of the types of music or choir songs that you choose, or are you really open to any kind of genre?
I would say we're very open. I would say we tend towards things without other instruments, although of course there's an exception to that tonight later, but we tend to focus on the 12 voices that are in the room. But we're also moving more and more towards getting perspectives from folks outside. So again, I mentioned Andrew earlier, and I'll talk about him again later, but bringing in guest curators who have different lived experiences or different perspectives than ours has been really important for us over the past few years and in the future going forward.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. These are highlights. This is highlights of the most, one of the most recent concerts, I guess. The 30th anniversary one, right, Deanna? That's what you mentioned. So it's not the full concert, just highlights, but I think you all have curated something pretty special for us this evening. Anything else that we want to share before we jump into the first, set up the first piece, I suppose?
Sure. I would love to tell you a little bit about the program. The program is called Rebirth, and it explores music and text about life, death, human connection, and the relationship with the natural world. So it's I was curated by Jake primarily. I don't know if Lucy, you have involvement in that process as well. They're nodding. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to say this is a collaborative curated performance. And it's really looking at the past at the same time as looking at the future. Did you two want to add anything to that before Jake sets up that first set?
No, I think that's a perfect summary, and we'll come back to those ideas as we go through, for sure.
Great.
Okay. Yeah. So we've divided this into sort of 3 chunks, 3 sets. So Jake, you're going to introduce this first set that we're going to listen to.
Yeah. So this is actually the opening of the concert. So I mentioned Andrew Balfour, and I promise I won't talk this much about every other piece, but it's so that I just love talking about Andrew. So we've been on this journey with Andrew Balfour, this Cree composer, for several years, and it culminated in him coming out to Vancouver and leading us through a concert in May 2022. Andrew is a 60s scooper, so he was taken from his family, from his blood at a very young age. He talks about how lucky he was to be raised by a very musical family. It didn't work out so well for so many children that were taken away. But one of the things that his foster family imbued in him is a love of music from England in the 17th century. So 400 years ago, English music. And that's something that he still loves to this day. And so what he wanted to do with Musica Intima is work with some of this music, but put his perspectives as a Cree person into it. So he wrote new texts in Cree and Ojibwe for music by William Byrd, for instance, who this piece is by. And he took a text that was gifted to him by an elder from the Seguin First Nation named Corey Campbell. And the text is Ambe Anishnabeg, come in, all you two-legged creatures. And Andrew introduces this piece talking about how we are all two-legged creatures. We're so busy dividing ourselves by color, by religion, by faith, but we are all two-legged creatures. And so he's actually written 3 Ambes over the past few years that we've done, but this is one from the Nagamo project that is just a welcoming song. Come in, all you two-legged creatures. There is good life here. After that, we're going to do a piece by Christopher Fulton, who's a Vancouver composer. This was a commission, a piece that we asked Chris to write for us for our 25th anniversary 5 years ago. It's called Silver for the 25th anniversary. And it's basically, Deanna was talking about our connection to nature. This is about a pear tree. And I just want to read you some of the text because it's a poem by Hilda Doolittle, and it has this beautiful imagery. Silver dust lifted from the earth, higher than my arm's reach you have mounted. O silver, higher than my arm's reach, you front us with great mass. No flower ever opened so staunch a white leaf. No flower ever parted silver from such rare silver. O white pear, your flower tufts, thick on the branch, bring summer and ripe fruits in their purple hearts. This is Ambe by Andrew Balfour and Silver by Christopher Fulton.
Awesome. So we're going to listen to both of those pieces back to back in just a moment. Deanna, do you want to set up, because these are visual videos, just a little background about what the visuals are?
So our performance space, what will play in the background of the music is the 12 performers standing on a wooden stage in a beautiful cathedral space. And the singers are standing holding music folders. So during the concert, every singer is like looking at their music, looking out to the audience, looking at each other, because part of that collaborative leadership is really connecting with other singers in the space while singing. Singers are spaced about 3 feet apart, 2.5 to 3 feet apart in an arc or a semicircle. And while we're singing, you hear the sounds kind of echoing through this big cavernous cathedral. And, you know, there are stained glass windows up on the walls. So if the camera angles shift and change, you might see like the stained glass windows framed in large arced wooden windows. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful sounding space, beautiful feeling to sing in a space like that, where there's so much resonance and acoustic beauty, and also really stunning to see the colors of the stained glass with the warm wooden tones, and also the lighting effects, the colored lights that kind of shadow the different pieces and create different visual moods with lighting.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to hit play on these. So Rick, we're going to play back to back. So folks, we're going to hear Ambe, which is just over 2 minutes, and then there'll be a little bit of a pause, and we'll transition right into Silver, and we'll come back and talk with our guests. All right, friends, let's have a listen to these. It's stunning to listen to. It's stunning. Deanna, thank you for the little description about the space. Did you tell us the name of the venue? This isn't a. Some folks who are in the Vancouver area might have been in this venue.
I just noticed that we have lost Jake and Lucy, so I imagine they will be.
We can't start our video. We're
Oh.
trying. We're here. Hello.
Hey, okay.
Hello.
Jacob, can you let everybody know the name of the space, and also, your video is back. And also some of the other spaces that Musica Intima performs in Vancouver.
Yeah, so that's Christchurch Cathedral downtown. It's at the corner of Burrard and Georgia. I started singing there in 2010, so I've had a long association with that space. I'm not there anymore, but it was a lovely space for Intima. We've been in that space for about 15 years. We historically have sung in many churches, and we're trying to sing in fewer and fewer churches as time goes on, because there are barriers to people feeling comfortable in spaces, and it's important to us that our audience feels comfortable where we're bringing them. And we sing in a variety of spaces, but we're always looking for that sort of perfect acoustic. And I will highlight one space that we've been in recently that feels really wonderful is the Mountain View Cemetery, which is the oddest thing to say, but they have a wonderful celebration hall there that has the most exquisite sounding space. It's a perfect size for our 12 singers and about 90 audience members. And so I would encourage you to, if you see events there, don't be scared off by the cemetery. It's really a wonderful space to be in.
Awesome. Thank you for that context, because I think too is, especially for our local group, and maybe this won't be the last time you'll be in this virtual space for our not so local folks, but for our local groups, there are a lot of music lovers in this space, and so if there are opportunities to check out these choirs, this choir in particular, in person at some venues that are close to folks, that could also be a really great opportunity to experience some of this, live and in person in a space. I'm curious about singing in languages that may not be somebody's first language, because of course you mentioned that the first song Ambe was written in Anishinaabe.
Ojibwe, yeah.
Ojibwe, thank you, Ojibwe. And so what is that like for you all as singers of pieces when you have a language that is not your first language? What is that like in terms of rehearsal processes? Do you bring in cultural representation of languages? I'm just curious what that process is like.
It's such an important part of choral tradition. I grew up, my first choir was a Mennonite choir. And so we sang German, and we had German coaches come in and practice. We had, at the time, cassette tapes that we had to go.
Deanna, that's a throwback, right? Cassette tape.
But that is, me as a young child, that's what I did. I was listening to cassette tapes and practicing my pronunciation, and that carried on through music school. And when you're studying voice, that you are learning languages and understanding phonetics, how to pronounce different languages, even if you don't understand always, what you're saying without research, you might know how to speak through the language. Did you want to add to that, Lucy and Jake?
I think also, when we're working with other languages, the pandemic actually was a silver lining, because we realized that we can invite any composer, living composer, into our Zoom space to not only go over the language with us, but also the context of the piece, why they wrote it, have us sing to them and then give us immediate feedback. So we're definitely making an effort to try and get anyone who's available to come in and give a bit of context on the pieces and the language, for sure. And
really, by the time we perform, we should feel like we know exactly what we're saying as if it was our mother tongue. And so with a piece like Ambe, we've worked with Andrew on the language. We've actually, when we toured, we were in Winnipeg where Corey is, and so Corey sang us his version of Ambe as well. So we have that in our toolkit. And then it really feels like that language is just as in us, in those 4 words. It's just as in us as our mother tongues are. And that's what we strive for, whether it's in Indigenous languages or in Asian languages or in the sort of French, German, Italian that many of us studied in school. Scandinavian languages, it's all, you never know what you're going to get.
And if we can't access the composer directly, we tap into our network to see who has a friend who's Latvian, and can speak these words and send them over to us, or even better, a singer friend who's Latvian who can then, sing the rhythm of the words, so it's not just straight pronunciation of them. So
and also share the intention, because although the translation is there, that doesn't always capture like what is the essence of this phrase, what is really important that we're expressing emotionally through the music.
And
especially with so much poetry, we often are singing in so much poetry that is not literal, doesn't always help you.
Does it feel in any way, again, I'm trying to be careful how I ask this question because I'm not quite sure how to ask it, but I wonder about, like, in particular with Indigenous languages, when we are non-Indigenous peoples, whether, certain permissions need to be given by the composers and the writers, or, because that could maybe be a delicate balance when the settler folks are singing Indigenous words. So what is that like for you all? And are there protocols in place that we honor when we offer these songs?
Yeah, I mean, I would say from a settler perspective, we are extremely careful with Indigenous musics and making sure that the composer wants us to sing it, making sure the composer's written it to be shared, making sure the composer's written it to be shared by us and not just by them, right? And so with that opening piece, we've worked very closely with Andrew. He was gifted this text, and then he in turn wanted us to share it. We've now published the piece under his direction, right? So that's something we feel comfortable about. I would never program something with Indigenous texts without talking to the composer first. And I think this is an excellent time to bring up a really wonderful book called Hungry Listening by Dylan Robinson, it's a very academic book, but it was very eye-opening for me in terms of Indigenous music not being all for musical performance. And that seems like something I think so many of us are aware of now, but 5 years ago, I was not aware of that at all. And so song could be law, song could be stories, and that's not our right to sing that. It's not our right to share that as a musical performance. So to answer your question, yes, we're extremely careful, and that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time. But with Andrew, we've gone a certain direction, and it's worked out really beautifully. That's a settler perspective. I don't know, Deanna, what you would offer in this context.
Yeah, I would just affirm what you said, that the relationship is really important. So particularly with the pieces Jake is talking about, and a piece that we'll do a little bit later, that we'll perform on Zoom space a little bit later, the conversation and permission is in the publishing. So when an Indigenous composer publishes a piece, that is giving permission for that piece to be shared. It's also very important, like Jake said, to make that personal connection and relationship, so that you understand the context behind with which that piece is being shared. It's important to share song story in my tradition, my Indigenous tradition. And so having the conversation with the composer is going to give you that story to share.
Thank you for offering that, because as a settler person who's listening to this, it's beautiful, and then I wonder, am I allowed to enjoy this, and what is, you know what I mean? I'm curious about the sort of the journey to sharing the work, and what care has been taken. And so thank you for sharing that, that there are protocols, and that there is care that is put into this, because if we don't know what we don't know. Right? Just what you said, Jake, right? You could share a song and not realize that it's not yours to share. So thank you for sharing that. Lucy, you're going to introduce the third song in this set. So
yeah,
introduce this.
Yeah, we wanted to take a bit of a set break just to give space to this piece, because it's quite, you'll see it's a really beautiful piece, but there's a bit of tragedy around it, because in late March, we actually lost this composer very suddenly and tragically. Jocelyn Morlock was such a mainstay of like the Vancouver and Canadian and beyond composition and arts community. And yeah, at the end of March, she passed away really suddenly and tragically. And so we commissioned this piece Exaudi from her in 2004. And so that's about how long we've been friends with her as an ensemble. And so when we got that news, it was only maybe like a month out from the concert. So we were able to pivot really quickly and take one of the other pieces off the program and say, no, we want to do Exaudi. We want to honor Jocelyn in this time and, you know, create a space for the community to come and hear it, to mourn together. So having said that, introducing this context, I'm now going to read what Jocelyn wrote about the piece in 2004. She says, Exaudi was written for a concert about memory, mourning, and loss. My grandmother died in the year prior to me writing it. Exaudi is loosely based on her emotional and spiritual life as I saw it from a distance, in addition to being written out of love for her. She lost her husband at a young age, and this relates to the meaning of the first half of the text, Exaudi orationem meam, which means, hear my prayer, or hear me, all flesh will come to you. At the beginning of the piece, this text is set as ritualized repetition of words from the Requiem Mass, but during the course of the first section of the piece, these words become very specific, meaningful, and painful, describing my grandmother's overwhelming sense of loss following the sudden death of her husband. My grandmother lived to be almost 90. As she got older, the horror of death in general and the painful nature of her grief changed and faded. When she was much older, the idea of death became a more gentle thought to her, comforting, and possibly something to look forward to. She talked about perhaps being reunited with her husband after she died. And this is in the second section, the In Paradisum section of the piece, which shows that sense of comfort. She used to joke about him seeing her and wondering who this old woman could possibly be. So there's that little humor and a flair that Jocelyn had. Yeah, so this is featuring Jonathan Lowe on cello, and actually one of our alumni, Siri Olson, also joined singing with us, who was there for the premiere of the piece. So this is Exaudi by Jocelyn Morlock.
Awesome. Let's have a listen. Rick, why don't you hit play? That was Exaudi. What a beautiful piece that is. And this one is different in that we have a musical instrument. So how often does it happen, Jake and Lucy, I suppose, that you actually have a musical instrument? Because you started by telling us this evening that most often you focus on the voices in the space, the singing voices in the space. So how often do you have pieces that are including musical instruments?
I wouldn't say once a year, but probably once every 2 years or so. And then more often than not, it's cello. And more often than not, it's because we want to program that piece. To be totally honest, it's. I was just saying to Lucy while we were listening that this is one of the pieces that I would sing again and again and again, and
Yeah.
have no complaints about. And we worked with Jonathan several times over the past few years on various gigs, and he's wonderful to work with and a beautiful, beautiful player. And I was a cellist growing up, and I abandoned that to sing. But so it's always nice to bring a cello back into this space for my own selfish reasons.
Well, and as we're looking forward to future collaborations, we're actually looking at smaller groups of instruments. There's a brass trio that one of our members plays trumpet in. And so we're looking at collaborating with them. And there's also a sort of a contemporary music instrumental ensemble. And they're quite similar. They're 30 years old and they're collaborative. So we've been trying to make a project work with them. So yeah, I think we're slowly exploring more of that. Yeah.
I think this is a good time to maybe introduce the performance that we'll be giving this weekend, because we are also collaborating.
Indeed. Would you like to do that?
I think you have more of the context for how long this is taken to put this particular group together. So I'd love it if you would offer that.
Yeah, for sure. So as Deanna mentioned, there's two professional choirs in the city. We are one, and the Vancouver Chamber Choir is the other. And the last time the two groups collaborated was about 20 years ago. And they have a new artistic director who just came in 4 or 5 years ago. And as soon as he got to town, we all sat down and said, hey, maybe we should try and work together sometime. So this Saturday night at St. Andrew's Wesley United Church, which is another big old church downtown, we're doing
acoustic.
Beautiful acoustic. And we're doing a piece called Nightingales, which is based on the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. And it features a recorder soloist who is sort of the voice of the nightingale. And it's not, it's not the hot cross buns you learned in elementary school on your recorder. He's a very, very virtuosic player that we've flown out from Montreal. And it will make the recorder do things you never knew were possible. But again, it was a stunning piece. It's a stunning choral piece. It's something like 29 parts.
Right.
Plus
So we had
recorder. So we had to get together with friends.
Yeah, we had to collaborate, and they had to collaborate too, because there are 20 people, sometimes 16, sometimes 24. We're 12. So in order for either of us to be able to do this amazing work, we were like, okay, we got to work together. So
and then you got to find a recorder player.
Yeah. Who's willing to take that on?
Yeah.
He's got to switch different recorders between the movements as well.
Yeah.
We're not sure yet even how many recorders he's going to bring.
Yeah.
So we'll be surprised tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this is happening Saturday, November the 25th. You don't know how many recorders are coming?
Well,
we'll find out tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
we have rehearsals tomorrow and Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, so this astonishes me, but I guess at a professional level, you all can handle the fact that you can have rehearsals just a couple of days before performance.
Well, and we usually have a longer run up to it, but then it's these final pieces that we start getting together with other groups and other people in that last run up. So we've been working on this music for almost a month now. And it's just finally everyone's going to be in the same room for the first time tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so as members of the choir, you all you all do solo work, I guess, to prepare for these performances. What does that look like in terms of your process? I imagine it's different for everybody, but Deanna, what does that look like for you? How do you prepare?
Well, like Lucy and Jake mentioned, we're doing different things. Music Intimate is a part of what we do. And so individually, people are, Jake prepares a list of pieces. Here's the music, here's the repertoire. These are the dates you need to know. And everybody prepares ahead of time. So on your own, you are sourcing the music that you can refer to. You're reading through scores. You're practicing them on your own, understanding, sort of your own context. How does this feel in my voice? What do I need to do to prepare it? And then we get together for usually a first run through. So in that first rehearsal, we're not spending a lot of time rehearsing. we are literally running through. And when we worked on this Nightingale's piece, it's about a 30-minute work. So it was really fascinating to hear 12 people trying to cover, 29 parts, and there were lots of spaces, and you really rely on your own training and musicality and music reading ability, because without all of those parts, you have to sort of audiate. You have to hear them in your head, you have to place them in, and you have to place yourself within the score or your part within the score, despite the fact that you can't hear everything there. So tomorrow will be exciting because we'll hear the recorder soloist, on top of everything, just sort of like the ribbon on top of the sound, because we've been piecing it together without all the pieces.
There's something really exciting about that, like from a performer's perspective. There's something kind of exciting about that. Almost, I don't want to call it improv because it's not. There's a certain amount of prep that goes into it, but there's a bit of the unknown that's also when you hit that stage. There's a bit of that you have to rely on the folks that are in your space. There's that trust capsule that has to be built, which is kind of important in any performance. Yeah.
It is absolutely so exciting when everything starts to come together, and you can listen to a piece over and over again at home, but there's nothing quite like actually being in the room with lots of people creating the same thing together.
Yeah, and it only happens even if you perform it more than one time, it is unique every time you do it. It's like it's a one space in one time in one moment that will never be repeated again.
Yeah,
it's one of the things I love about live performance is that the makeup is never the same twice, right? The audience will always be different, or like there will always be something different, so it's never the same twice.
Well, and even listening to these videos that we did in April of last year, every time we listen, I still hear something new. I hear a new voice coming out of the texture, or I notice again how long we spent in this one note in a place, and it's even if you know what you're hearing, it's still new. It's always new.
Yeah,
what's exciting about this field, I think.
Like, because Euro is different. Like Euro is changing, and so every time you revisit it, you are a different person. Human. Yeah.
That's so true. Hey, that's so true. Okay, cool. This was a really beautiful piece, and I'm really drawn to the cello. I don't know what it is about the cello for me personally that I don't know, it just makes the hairs stand up in my body. I have a real visceral reaction to the cello, so for me this piece really, I don't know, really lives in my body somehow. Really resonates with me on a level, and how you provided the context of it before we went into it really changed how my relationship to the piece. And I wonder, when you're in concert spaces with folks, because you have so lovingly given us some context about these pieces before we've listened to them, do folks in the concert hall get these like in a program or anything? Do they have any kind of background about the pieces before they listen to them, or are they really just listening to them raw without any sort of printed context?
Well, we try to actually do both. We do have a program that has, well, now it's a QR code, but it has some printed context from the composer themselves, because the composers aren't always there. So every piece has the note from the composer about what they hoped for.
And actually, it's a decision from the audience member whether they want to do that. Some people prefer to go in cold and then maybe read about it after, or and then we also try to announce from the stage what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we can't always go into so much detail because of time, but we do want to give at least a window into the music. And some of the music we do is weird. And it's weird sounds, and it's hard to listen to, either because it's loud or it's just strange. And we want to make sure that anyone in the space can get something from that. And there's always a reason that we want to share it, right? So we do try to announce most things in concerts.
Awesome. Well, I think unless there's anything else either of our guests want to offer in the space, I'd love to navigate to set 2. Are we
Yeah.
ready to navigate to set 2?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
sounds good.
All
Is
right,
that me?
Jake, you're going to introduce this, right?
It's still me. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, so these are another 2 newer pieces of choral music. The first one was written actually for this 30th anniversary concert by a Canadian composer named Tawny Olson. And Tawny's someone who we've done a few of her pieces in the past. Actually, often she includes an instrument in her writing. So we did a pretty wild piece of hers with harp several years ago, and then a piece with cello with Jonathan last fall. But this is a piece when we commission composers for new music, we try not to give them any parameters. We just say, we'd like you to write us some music. What would you like to talk about? And Tawny is a Canadian composer. She's from Calgary, but she lives in America. And so when she was writing this piece, Roe v. Wade had just been overturned. And so reproductive rights were front of mind for her. So she found some speeches actually in the UBC archives by Rosemary Brown, who was the first Black provincial MLA in Canada. And she was a BC MLA. And she had given all these speeches in Toronto in the 80s. And so Tawny set large swaths of these speeches about reproductive rights. And so we're going to share the first movement, so just part of that piece. And the text is, we must question our continuing lack of choice, our lack of power, and the threat to our right to control the terms and circumstances of our reproduction. This is a very fiery piece. Tawny's included some foot stomps for us, just to really drive the point home. So you'll hear that sort of the passion in Tawny's writing and the passion in Rosemary's words. And then we're going to go to an equally passionate but very different piece by Edmonton composer Stuart Beach. And Stuart is a young queer composer. And in the Western choral canon, there's a very famous piece called A Boy and a Girl, which is a beautiful piece of music. We sang it at Lucy and I's wedding, but there are a lot of people who don't see themselves in a piece called A Boy and a Girl. So Stuart commissioned his friend and poet Matthew Stepanek to write an unapologetically queer love story, and that is called A Boy and a Boy. So after the call by Tawny Olson, you'll hear the love story of A Boy and a Boy by Stuart Beach.
Awesome. I'm excited to listen to these. So Rick, we're going to play these back to back as well. So folks, let's listen to The Call and then A Boy and a Boy. pieces are just so gorgeous to listen to. I can't even imagine what it's like being in these acoustic spaces. The audio is pretty good, but I just can't imagine what it's like to be there in person. Okay, so anything that we want to share about these two works? Deanna, you're shaking your head. I think I see a shaking of the head.
Yeah, I'm actually still thinking about what you just said about being in these spaces.
Yeah.
And hearing this music. But what I was reminded of is being a child and starting to sing in a choir, and what it felt like to feel the music. So when you're singing, like I can sing a lot of beautiful pieces in a beautiful choir and it can feel good, but some pieces feel different in the body. Like they just ring in a certain way that is absolute magic. Like it's a glorious feeling. And that last piece that we heard, A Boy and a Boy, feels to me. It just feels absolutely incredible inside my body to feel that song and those harmonies and the way they resonate with the people I'm singing with. Of course, in a beautiful acoustic space helps, but even when we're in our rehearsal spaces, that piece just feels great to sing.
Do you ever come across, not that anybody wants to admit this out loud, but do you ever come across pieces where you're like, oh, really, this piece again? You know, pieces that just aren't your favorites to sing? You don't have to call them out if you do, but I just wonder if that ever happens.
No, we absolutely do. And I think there's, with intima, we program ourselves, right? So we avoid stuff that we know we don't like, but there have often been pieces, and I mean, there was a piece on this program that we decided to not share with you tonight because we thought it looked great on paper and other recordings sounded great, and it just didn't work for the ensemble. And it's not that it's a bad piece of music or that it didn't resonate with some people in the performance even, but it didn't work for us in the way we wanted to feel it in our bodies.
Interesting.
And that does happen.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to take into account that the piece wasn't written for a smaller group. It may have been written for a much larger group. So we have to start, take into account tempo markings, like how fast it's going to go, because if you only have 12 people, there's only so much you can breathe. So sometimes we have to take pieces a little bit quicker. We have to kind of make little modifications to works. And sometimes that just doesn't work, like, oh yes, we can technically cover all the parts, but sometimes, it just doesn't jive.
Well, and sometimes those modifications make it a great experience, a new experience with an old piece, and sometimes they don't work, and that's okay. There are other groups that will do those same pieces so beautifully. So
right.
I can speak from the perspective of a choral director too. I've spent a lot of years working with different ensembles, and as the clientele changes, as your singers change, a piece that you've performed many times with a certain group of singers just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't connect in the same way. It doesn't quite sound right. And so it really is individual to the group and the ensemble members who are singing the piece.
I'd love to talk a little bit about this idea of, I guess, body percussion work, the steps that were in the call. And I know there's another piece that we're going to listen to that has a little bit of sort of body percussion stuff. I've done a couple of soundscape pieces in some artistic capacities where we use our bodies to make sound. And I find that to be really evocative and really interesting, not only to listen to, but to experiment with as a performer, and how you generate these different types of sounds and where the sounds come from and all those kinds of things. But it also means that you have to be very particular on the timing. Like if one person decides to stomp out of time, it just doesn't work, right?
That did happen in the performance. Actually, it was me.
Yeah.
Deanna, it was me.
Sorry, Lucy.
It's okay. No, I'm owning it. It was a confident error.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes our bodies just twitch and we do these things.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right. It was that.
I mean, this happens to me all the time. My body just does a thing and I didn't mean to do it. So, but I wonder about the thought process in bringing in this body percussion work, and maybe I'm not calling it the right thing. So you can correct my vocabulary. I would love to learn if that's not what you all are calling it, and whether it's strictly from like the composer's perspective, or whether you all get to experiment with that when you consider a piece.
Well, I think most of the stuff that Intima's done, it's in the score.
Yeah.
A suggestion of using your body in some way, and I think composers have different reasons for doing it. Tawny wanted really that as punctuation, and emphasis on what she was trying to get across, and I think Cheryl had a much different approach, which Deanna will, I'm sure, talk about in a minute. But then in that piece, you'll see Deanna also layered on another layer of physical gesture to help evoke some of the imagery that Cheryl was talking about. So we do have some license as performers to enhance what we feel the composer is trying to share. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're actually rehearsing that piece right now because we'll share Cheryl's piece on Saturday. But as we're working through it, we have input because we've met with the composer. So we know what the intention is. We know how the body percussion is supposed to fit, and it is called body percussion. We refer to it. Good job, Amy.
Oh my gosh, I got something right. I feel validated. Okay, continue.
And so we have sort of her vision and view about why it fits in the piece, what it's meant to be there for. But it is a coordinated thing. And we have one member who we sang with the performance that you heard tonight, who really felt uncomfortable with the movement. Like it took a lot of brain space just to coordinate that on top of remembering your vocal cues.
Yeah.
For other people, it's it's more natural. Maybe they're just more inclined to move their body while they're creating music. For me, I love to dance, and I find those kinds of movement pieces are not a terrible struggle for me. But you don't want to be the one stepping left when everybody's stepping right. So it does take practice and mindfulness while you're rehearsing.
Totally fair.
We did one piece several years ago, and this is Intima has in the past layered movement on, which I would call unnecessary. But we were supposed to be doing some sort of back and forth step touch thing as we were singing, and there was a spectacular moment where we were all supposed to go right and one person went left instead, and it was just this wonderful collision right in the middle of the piece, which adds a bit of casual and fun to the performance, which is important too. It's
Can't take ourselves too seriously.
Exactly. Yeah.
It adds the human element back into the work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and actually, like in the Cheryl's piece that's coming up, like I think you'll see, like we're all very joyful singing the piece because it's a joyful piece to sing. But I think also we're also the evening before in the performance, we had a bit of a disaster of again, maybe not noticeable except to like a few people who knew us really well and could like read it on our faces. So like the concert at Christchurch the next night, we were all just like laughing almost in the moment, because we're like, are we going to get through this movement? But we're having fun, and it actually like is lending itself to the performance because we're all just
you'll hear the smile in our voices. It's
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that when we get to that. Well, I think maybe unless there is another offer from the three of you, how do we feel about going into set 3?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dan, I think you're introducing this one, right?
I am. So we're going to hear 3 pieces back to back. We keep referencing these composers by first name. The composer who wrote the first piece, Okawimaw is Cheryl Siwi-Pegaham. She's a wonderful friend of ours. I know her from a few different contexts, and I think Lucy and Jake might as well. But she is Woodland Cree from Northern Alberta area. She's a singer, songwriter, composer, and the song is about Mother Earth. So the intention of the song, and you'll hear some language, some Cree language, the intention of those words, the intention of the song overall is love, hope, and standing in unity to take care of Mother Earth. So it's sort of this collective vision of, we are here, we're connecting to the earth, and you'll hear the sounds of leaves. So she starts the piece with this shh sound. Okay. And as we're doing that, we take our hands and we're drawing imaginary leaves up from the earth and returning the leaves back to the earth. So that's symbolic of our connection to earth. And the body percussion in that piece actually represents, our movement, connecting our hands, connecting to our body, which is standing on the ground. So we are connected physically also to the earth. And so we are stomping and we are patting our legs, and you'll hear that in her piece. The next piece is composed by Tracy Wong, who is a Malaysian choral conductor, works in Canada, composer, vocalist, and pianist. And the piece is called Jah Dekat, means far near. So it's in the title hyphenated, or not hyphenated. It's got like a slash between the two words. And it's separated to these two different concepts. And actually, the song is based on a Malaysian proverb about travel, journey, and humility. So it means far from sight, but near at heart. So it's kind of that the opposing ideas of near and far. And the last piece that we're going to perform is called Oliassa. And this has become a fast favorite of the ensembles. A beautiful piece by Malika Tyrolian. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Did I, Jake and Lucy? Yeah. And this is a vocalist, singer, songwriter, producer from Guadalupe, actually. Her piece Oliassa is another piece that just feels incredible inside the body to sing. The harmonies, when they lock with the other voices in the ensemble, I don't know how to describe it. I don't describe it very often, but when I feel a piece the way that I do with that A Boy and a Boy or Oliassa, it feels like the sound is literally expanding my aura. Like my body is not what I'm sensing. It's outside of my body and it keeps expanding, like sound waves going out or something. That's kind of my physical feeling of it. This piece is very much like that. And it's interesting because Malika describes the piece as the sound of a feeling that can be different for everyone. So in her words, it's a song that is a call from the ancestors, as if they want to share some serious knowledge with us, but in a profound way that we can only understand in our hearts. So it's just a gorgeous way to end our program, and we hope you really enjoy this next set.
And I just want to jump in and name that in Jah Dekat, you'll hear Takashi Majima as the soloist, who's a young Japanese tenor that sang with us. And then in Oliassa, the first solo you'll hear will be Deanna, and the second solo you're hearing will be Lucy.
Okay, so just if people aren't keeping track of the names, that's song number 2 is and then song number 3 with the soloists.
Yeah,
folks right. are wanting to just know the order of them.
Yeah,
because we are listening to these back to back. So. All right, friends, I'm excited to take a listen. Rick, when you're ready, let's hit play.
Due to copyright restrictions, excerpts of this presentation have not been recorded. Please check below for more information, including links to the material if it is hosted elsewhere.
Wow. I don't know what you can say after some of that. I suppose we could backtrack and start with Oliassa because Deanna, yours was the first solo. If folks are trying to distinguish your voice from Lucy's voice, and Lucy, you were the second solo. Oh my goodness. So beautiful, so impactful. And I wonder about like how do you choose who does the solos? Jake, do you get to choose? Or is this part of this is part of the collaboration, I'm guessing, but how do you choose?
Yeah, I mean, I generally have an idea
Mm-hmm.
that I suggest to the singers, and more often than not, that works out.
Mm-hmm.
I know everyone's voice moderately well, Deanna being the notable exception, because I really didn't know your voice that well when you started with us.
But we knew that Deanna had a vocal jazz background, and so we thought that
that would be a great solo.
And it was an
it was.
amazing fit for all of what you brought of yourself into it.
One of our singers likes to say that we can all choose our own parts and we can all figure our stuff out, but I know what fourth everyone's going to sound best in, what little part of their voice is going to be the sweetest. And so my gut tends to lead us down the right path. And we always keep it open. And if there's something that someone says, this really resonates with me, I really want to sing it, we make sure that can happen. Or I might assign something to someone and they're like, no, I hate that. That's a terrible idea. And then we start over. But it is teamwork, even though I usually try and shape things a certain way.
Well, and also we, just by virtue of, oh no,
my cat has just shredded our donation letters that we're asking for.
Oh no!
It's got a stamp on it and everything. Oh man. Well, I lost my train of thought there. Woo! What are you talking about? Solos. Oh yes. We just by virtue of doing the programming in the office, I mean, there's input from the ensemble, of course, but Jake and I are living with this music just longer.
Yeah.
And so, that coupled with the fact that, Jake knows everyone's voices probably better than themselves. Maybe not, yeah. He's very well equipped to choose sort of best ones. And we had heard Malika Tirilian at the Jazz Fest a year prior, so like last summer, and she did a set of like really high energy soul jazz, pop, R&B, which we loved, and like it was an outdoor concert and everyone was dancing, and so we got home and like explored her catalog a bit more and found this like one jewel of this a cappella without any instruments that we're like, we have to do this. Like it's just it's so like from the first listen of her singing it with her pals, I mean it's completely different of course from what we sound like, but yeah, so we wrote to her and she wrote back immediately and was like, oh my gosh, yes, transcribe this. And it was from her time at McGill, I think, when she was doing vocal jazz stuff there. So we lived with it for almost a year before we got to perform it. So when we finally did, I think, I mean, we all loved it, but there was a certain anticipation to do it too. Yeah.
How does it feel when you get to be a soloist when you're as a part of an ensemble?
I sang my first solo when I was a child, and I was a very shy child. And so that first solo was kind of like the pivot point. Like, if I want to do this, I have to overcome my shyness. I remember very distinctly, like, okay, I either have to go for it or I can't do this anymore. And so there was a decision made when I was maybe 7 years old. And after that, I would say it's just a process of like giving myself permission. And it changes over time. Like, I think as I age, the permission that I give myself now is less connected to others and audience, and it's more connected to myself, like giving myself permission to be in that soloist space in a more authentic way. I think that's the goal for me, is to release myself from this is just about performance, and draw from something within me to say, like, I'm gifting this solo, or I'm gifting this song out.
Oh, you can really hear that in the way both of you perform the solo pieces. For me, I think that feels like that really comes through, that it's not just something you're singing, right? There's a feeling, there's an essence there that is like I guess the word that you used, Deanna, it is like, this is a gift I'm offering to you. So I felt there was an all of yourselves. I think that kind of, you feel that in all of these pieces, but it really shines through in some of these solo pieces, because you're hearing a distinct piece from one person, and if that piece isn't strong, then you know it, right? So you hear the all in the voices. The same in for the soloist that we heard in the second piece as well. He had a beautiful voice.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the Oliassa in particular. I don't know if it's the idiom. It's a bit, it's a bit poppier, it's a bit jazzier, and growing up in the classical world, you feel like you're trying to fit into a box, and you're trying to sing with a certain technique. And I think as I've gotten older and maybe treated some of my neurodivergence of just being so panicked in the moment, and now that I'm treating that part of myself, I can be in the moment. I can let go of these expectations others have. And it was this combination of that with Malika's piece that I honestly feel, and I still feel like when I'm watching it, when we're singing it, like it's the most euphoric I have ever felt singing. And it is this, it's like Malika is also giving us permission to just be ourselves, and she wants it to be so personal. And I mean, and the way, like the under parts, like the writing of the backup vocals, if you will, is so supportive. And you feel like you're being, I'm just getting shivers talking about it. Yeah, you just feel so supported and just able to let yourself go.
I'm curious, and I don't know if I get to ask questions, but
absolutely.
Deanna, you've lived with this piece for 6 months now, and we're preparing it again, and you're singing the solo very differently. So I wonder if you could talk about how your interpretation of solo work changes over time with a piece.
Yeah, that's a great question. And specifically with this piece, because the solo that Lucy sings, the backgrounds are really full, and you feel like almost like all of the energy underneath the ocean, the current underneath is lifting that solo up, and you can soar on top of that power that's coming from underneath in the background vocal part. And the first solo is quite different. It's really spacious. Like, it feels like Jake is referring to this performance versus how I'm singing now on that same solo. I've reflected on the piece, actually. The piece is supposed to be the words of our ancestors, the call of our ancestors. And I think what I kind of detached from the first performance of it to now is that idea that the black and white notes on the page should be represented. Like, if I'm representing my ancestors' voice, I don't want it prescribed. I don't want it to be what I'm seeing on the page. I actually want to feel where it wants to go and trust that. And that's been an interesting exploration, because we are all musically trained singers, meaning we grew up reading music, understanding when you have a score in front of you, you are supposed to do what you see. And so to sing a solo, I'm kind of, to sing this particular solo, I'm relying on my jazz training, which is to give myself permission to get off the score and to sing what I hear, and to play with rhythm and express myself how I feel it coming to me. But the backgrounds in this piece are kind of like they're held, they're written. And so the singers underneath, I'll bring this question back to Lucy, because Lucy sings in the background part of this solo, and I am kind of moving like vapor over top of it, and the background is holding like flame, I would say. It's different than Lucy's solo. So Lucy, I'd love to pass it over to you and have you think about it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that you have the freedom to express that and do that. And we want to support you as much as we can, of course. Yeah, it's just sort of getting used to the different notes that you're singing and how they now relate to our notes. And it's a learning thing, and I think the more we do it, the better it's getting. And like I'm loving it, and I'm like, okay, we just need to be really solid and yeah, trust our knowledge of it. And it's hard when you're memorized as well, because you're easily thrown off, I would say. But like, no, I think I love what you're doing, Deanna, and I'm really excited to see what happens on the day. And then that's part of the exciting process of it, right? Is you're never really sure what's going to happen, and that's part of the magic. And we will be there under you, supporting you.
In a jazz context, this is a very familiar process where the vocalist or the instrumentalist, the soloist, period, really has total liberty to do what, and the rest of the band is holding it down. Like, that is the structure. And jazz performances are exciting for that reason. Like, people who love jazz love that element. You don't know what's going to happen. And that brings me to that performance. Like, I'm there for that. So it's kind of cool to combine this ensemble with those elements. It is kind of me with a foot in both worlds. So that's exciting for me.
It makes us grow as well, right? Like, yes, the classical musician is tied to the score. It's like, no, we got to throw that out. Got to not pressure ourselves, challenge ourselves, just to go with the flow. And again, yeah, it's hard, but thank you for encouraging us.
Oh, you're doing great.
Grow and stretch as artists.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is the performance that's happening this Saturday that you're doing this, Deanna?
We have our big choral work, Nightingales, and then the Vancouver Chamber Choir will do a short set, and Musica Intima will do a short set, and we have programmed Oliassa as one of our pieces.
Okay. Wow. So you're just days away from this.
Days away.
Very cool beans. I just want to remind friends in our virtual audience here, if you want to share comments about what you experienced tonight, if you have questions for our guests in the space, I don't even have to wait very long. The hands pop up. Please use that raise your hand function and we'll call on you. So I've got a hand from, I've got to get close enough to be able to read it. Oh, it's from Sean and Christy. So I'm guessing it's Christy, but I could be wrong. One day I'll be wrong and it'll be Sean, but let's see who it is.
No, you're perfectly right. It's Christy.
I figured. Go ahead, Christy.
I can't help it if I'm an artistic person.
I know.
Yeah. I've been a choir girl since I was a child, so this really brightened my day because we had a really tiring day. So this was really cool. I remember, so I grew up in the Caribbean, and it was a British school, so we were ordered to sound British and not Trinidadian. Colonization's a wonderful thing, ain't it? Anyhow, so we spent a lot of time singing hymns and sounding perfectly British until one recital when we got all excited because we got to sing a song in dialect. But they brought in a dialect coach so that we'd sing it with a British accent. So I just remember that just being, we were so happy to sing this song in our quote unquote language, but we had to sound British about it. And the second thing I wanted to say is I remember my first solo, my entire body was chattering, like my teeth were chattering, and I was shaking so hard. It was once in Royal David City for our Christmas concert, and then my mom goes, you did a horrible job. You should have practiced more.
Your mom's just a wonderful, encouraging soul.
I was like, okay, I will. And I did, because the next year I did Wind Beneath My Wings, and I did not chatter. So this brought back a lot of really cool choir girl memories, and those harmonies, you guys, are just insanely awesome. And I totally know what you mean about feeling that music, because you can sing words and audiences will listen and go, yeah, that's a good song. But if you can make the audience feel it, that's the magic. So you have to feel it yourself to make that audience like just enraptured. And that's what you guys do. So yeah, it's beautiful. I'd love to hear you live in a church, because I grew up in those, amongst that stained glass and the, I know about singing in those spaces, and it's magic. It's really magic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Christy.
Yeah, that once in Royal David City solo. Whew. I mean, and sometimes you're walking at the same time because it's like a processional. Oh man, I get you. Sometimes I can hear my heartbeat while I'm holding a note, like if my heart's beating really hard, and you're trying to like hold a still note, and you're just hearing that.
Do you all have strategies for combating nerves? Do you even get nervous anymore?
Not very anymore, but I mean, thousands of performances.
Yeah.
Like that's a skill in itself. Just going back onto that stage and singing for 12 people or singing for 30 or 3,000, it kind of starts to feel the same for me. It's just like knowing the skills, knowing what I'm supposed to do in that space.
Right. Trusting your instrument.
Well, and also trusting, and intima, this is especially true. You can really trust the people you're up there with.
Right.
And that makes such a huge difference for my nerves.
Yeah.
I had weird anxieties about things I would not be able to control that I'm now taking medication for. So that helps. Like, getting at what if my, my pants fall down or something, just something completely random, to do with, it's intrusive. So like now that those are taken care of, the trust that you get from the mutual trust from your colleagues is really helpful.
Yeah, no, I still get very nervous for like solo work if I'm with an instrumental ensemble, or when I was putting together like my master's recital or something like that. But with intima, it's always been different, that there's another 11 people up on stage that I trust, and I know they've got my back and I've got theirs if something happens. And it's just, it feels very comfortable, and I feel very held in that space, which is I think unique, but it makes choir performance a different beast.
Yeah, and it's not to say that we never mess up and
absolutely we do.
Yeah, but I think it's in the reaction to that again you feel that trust. It's like we all like, okay, hone in.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah. That's pretty
Are there things that you all do as a group, like the 12 of you and I suppose, partners and whatnot, to help build that bond between the group outside of rehearsals and performances and stuff? Like, are you connected as just humans?
Yeah,
we try to be, and we try to start the cycles with like a read through of the texts or the music in our living room, just to encourage us to all share this music as friends as well as colleagues. And it's nice to go out for a beer after rehearsal or
and once a year we maybe more than once now, but like we've after the pandemic we've started holding it was the second year this year of a retreat, so that we all go away for a few days together, and really, sing together, of course, but just also talk and like dig into,
hang out and play cards, and make food, and it's just sharing meals is so important.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's the touring too. Whether it's a little weekend to the island, or last March we did a 3-week tour across Canada with Andrew as part of the Nagamo project, and I mean, you can't help but bond through those things, so busy but like fulfilling and beautiful. So it really is a community.
And also part of the rehearsal process is sitting in a circle together, and there's something very connective about being in a circle facing everybody in the ensemble, making eye contact with each person, and when we're singing together, looking up from the music and catching somebody across the circle or maybe beside you, who is experiencing the music at the same time, but also in a similar way. So maybe you breathe together, or maybe you articulate a word together. That's super connective. I find that builds trust for me when I have those musical moments.
I often wonder how that works in choirs of blind folks, how they build that connectivity without being able to make eye contact and without, right? Because you talk about how important that is. And I think in some of these videos, I can see in the body language, I'm not on your faces necessarily, but I can see in the body language how some of you are all turning to each other, which means you're watching each other to kind of maybe predict where people are going or making those connections and that kind of thing. I just wonder about how that works in a choir of folks who are blind, or maybe if you just have a couple of blind folks in a choir in general.
I
I don't know if we have any folks in our space that are part of blind choirs other than Christy, who already mentioned that, but if anybody has any thoughts on that, I would love to learn what those strategies are.
I certainly have some experience as a teacher, as a music teacher, teaching students who are part of my choir who are partially sighted or blind, and also colleagues singing with people who do not have sight. And I don't know that there is a lot of differentiation when you are actually in the musical moments, because singing is a felt experience.
Right.
You know? And the sound really enhances the feeling. And so I referenced like making eye contact, but also there is feeling a phrase together.
Right.
When we start to crescendo or decrescendo, like get louder or softer together, those musical moments are felt in the body. And like you referenced sort of the movement of our bodies together, phrasing together. That's part of it. But I totally feel that more than I would see it or experience it in any other way. It's the feeling that I connect to.
Those like particularly crunchy harmonies that you could just really dig into with your partmate, and then it resolves, and like that is such a visceral feeling. And I can't speak to being partially sighted or blind in a choir, but breathing, we're really focusing on breathing. And we're leading a couple, so our collaboration with the Vancouver Chamber Choir, of course, there's the director, the conductor, and he's conducting a few movements, and we're leading a few movements in the intima style without the conductor. And Jake had us just almost 30 of us yesterday or the other day breathe. And when we could hear that we're all breathing together, which didn't take as long as you might think, then we can start. Like then we've centered ourselves together and we can breathe together. And the process of musica intima is always growing as well, because before we would assign certain people to cue as a conductor would. And we're actually trying to move away from that a bit so that it can feel more holistic and everyone leading, and that is entirely breath. Is hearing that breath and knowing the impulse of when to start together and end together, really.
I like to do, I don't know if anyone else likes to do it, but I like to make the group do an exercise where we all turn around and go back to back to back. And so we're not looking at each other for any cues. And in pre-pandemic times, we would really make sure everyone was touching shoulders. We're a little more cautious about that now, but it's this, how can we start something? How can we be perfectly unified without relying on almost, it can become a cheat for us, especially just to watch each other's mouths and be like, oh, I don't have to really think about what I'm doing. If I look at Deanna's mouth, then I can see when she's singing what she's singing, and I'll just match that. Well, and actually, but that's not real connection, right? That's just
And during the pandemic, that was taken away as we all wore masks. That was a huge, I mean, we had to be spaced as well, but the mouth cueing, but so to grow through that and not rely on that as much because we couldn't.
Yeah.
So all evolving all the time.
Yeah, to pivot.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a hand from Sue. Give Sue a moment to unmute. There we go. We got you, Sue.
When I was a kid, we used to have an all-girls barbershop quartet. Not, of course, at the level of your beautiful music, but for barbershop, and we got to think as one mind and breathe at the same time. And we knew what each other was thinking, because we were all we were all in a school for the blind as children, and we'd sing in washrooms at the school and hallways and parking lots. So, you know, but wow, your singing was so beautiful. It's just breathtaking. But it's wonderful when you can get a chance to sing, whether you can see the people around you or not. But one time I was in a choir at the church I go to, and we were singing "Oh How a Rose" at Christmas, and there was 3 people away with colds. 2 other people couldn't make it, and there was like 5 out of 10. Oh, it was really terrible, but it's really funny now. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Oh, I love that, the funny in hindsight kind of things. In the moment, it's but you gotta laugh.
Yeah, because yes, thank
Mhm.
you.
The show must go on.
I had a director once who used to program things like the day of or the day before, and we would be like madly learning music on a bus ride to the gig. You know, sound check was like your first real rehearsal on something. It was so stressful. I still have nightmares about that.
That's like when you have nightmares about, not making it to your test in high school, or like you didn't get a chance to study. You still have these nightmares, right?
Your anxiety dream, yeah.
We got a hand from Nancy.
Mhm.
Give Nancy a moment to unmute here. Yeah, I also was a choir kid, and the more I'm in spaces with folks that are doing choir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Nancy, we got you.
I really enjoyed it. I remember being in the band when I was in grade 7 to grade 12. And when they auditioned me in front of everyone, I was in a circle and I had to sing like la 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 la, but she made me go higher and I didn't like the higher pitch voice. And then she said, no, your voice is too loud. So she made me play loud or sing louder. And then we had to sing silent. My voice was so loud that I didn't even want to sing anymore. But they said, continue on, Okawimaw faithful. And I go, oh my God. And because I'm deaf, I couldn't hear myself singing. So young. And then I started playing the clarinet and I just started going on the stage. My lip was moving every 4 minutes. I was shaking, nervous. Then it was down to Disneyland. My legs were shaking as I was singing. And then we had to do a Victoria Day parade. And we had to go all over like Disneyland too. We had to, make move around the whole street. And I was just nervous because I was gonna, because I had the high pitched voice. I had to make sure my voice was louder. It was good. But listening to you guys today was awesome. And I was gonna ask you if I ever want to play my clarinet. I've got it. I would like to go back to school, and because now I can't see, I want to start playing with my clarinet to where I used to do when I was a child. Is there any way I can do that somewhere?
Oh, yes, for sure. I don't know
it's
where you live, Nancy, but there
in
are
Burnaby.
Burnaby. There is a group in New West. New West has community bands. So if you haven't played for a while, you might consider taking some private lessons first. And you can find private clarinet teachers through music stores often, other places as well, but that would be a good place to start.
Okay, that's awesome.
And then if you wanted to play in an ensemble like the band you used to play with when you toured to California, have different levels of bands in New West, and that's not too far from Burnaby. So that might be an option for you.
Do you know the name of it? I didn't hear the name.
New Westminster Community Bands. You can search up that.
Okay. Oh, that'd be awesome. Because, it's been sitting in under the bed for, oh my God, I'm like 80 years old now. No, it's been sitting there. I've got it when the grade 12. So since I graduated in 80. Oh my God, it's been there that long.
You may want to have it serviced first.
Yeah.
No, and she's in good condition. My son said, Mom, why don't you play with that? I go, because I kept it so good because we, back then it was like $2,500. I like to know how much it costs now. It's the original, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my God.
You'll want to check the pads and just check if the pads will still seal.
The wreath I have to buy all the time because that's the thing. Yeah, the pad. Yeah, it's a clarinet. So clarinet, Yeah. Oh, I would love to go back. You know, but it, like I said, oh my God, I remember listening to them. I'm deaf, but I remember hearing sound that I made out of my mouth, and oh my God, I go, I can't hear, I can't hear. I go, you do it good. Don't stop, don't stop. But now I can't see. I
Well,
don't
maybe
know.
it'll come back to you, Nancy, like riding a bike.
I know. There you go. I love it, and I love what you did today. Thank you for sharing this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Well, this has been a really fun night. A little bit of a roller coaster journey with the songs that you all curated. So thank you so much for sharing them. And the more I'm in spaces with folks who are a part of choirs, the more I want to join a choir. Because I was a choir kid too, and then I lost it for a while. And but I love singing, but I'm not a classically trained anything. So
Okay.
I think sometimes, you tell yourself that because, you don't have any air quote skills that you don't belong in these spaces. But I think, that's a little bit of unlearning that I need to do, and maybe some other folks need to do too. So music is supposed to be joyous for everybody.
Yes. Let's talk, Amy. Let's talk.
Let's talk. All right, my friend. I'm with you on that one. Thank you so much, Jake and Lucy and Deanna, for sharing this in the space tonight. It's really been a very enriching special time to have you all here. So thank you so much for bringing Musica Intima to the VocalEye Almost Live space.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's been super fun.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
I would love to curate something else. Let's consider this.
All right.
And thank you so much to Deanna for connecting us all.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, happy to.
Awesome. All the best for Saturday's performance and beyond, because I know you got some other things coming up. So all the best to you all for the next handful of performances. Break some legs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.